Seems a little sussy, but alright. Ah, okay, well, that makes sense.
Forgive me, Father.
With Forgive Me Father 2 entering early access, I thought, what a perfect time to review the first game. It had some flaws, but for the most part, it was an incredibly good boomer shooter. So today we're going to be going over all its pros and cons, and getting close and personal with it, seeing what the vibe is like, and then eventually putting it in the boomer shooter chart. I haven't come up with a name for it yet, but we're going to rank it amongst the new era shooters and see where it will fall. Come along on this journey as we talk about Forgive Me Father. So, what are you doing in Forgive Me, Father? Well, it's a first person shooter, so you'll be shooting things. However, it immediately sets itself apart from other boomer shooters and new era shooters in that it's 2.5D, which is semi unique in the area, but not super unique. Um, it has a better than average story, probably worse than average voice acting, but also gun customization, sort of, and XP and leveling up, which is something that it's incredibly unique to this space. So itself sets itself apart pretty early on. On top of that, you get to pick a character, which is something that I don't, at least with the other boomer shooters I've played, I can't recall any of them doing. So that's pretty unique, and it's something I hope to see in the sequel that is coming out into early access in a couple of weeks. Now, normally, the first thing I'd be doing for a first person shooter review is immediately jumping to the gameplay. However, I think this game does one thing better than gameplay, which is really remarkable for a first person shooter because it's usually the most important part, and that is art direction. The art direction in Forgive Me Father is stupendous, and I really find it interesting how divisive that is in the community because I feel like when it was recommended to me, several people had told me straight out they thought it was ugly. Um, I can kind of understand that, but I feel like the style fits the vibe they are going with a H.P. Lovecraft inspired game, which references are a huge thing in this game. We'll get to that later, but it plays a huge part of the game. But yeah, the art style, very moody. Obviously, a lot of it appearing to be semi hand drawn. Uh, a lot of the levels, each area is unique, not mission, but level. So there's 5 levels in the game, and then I think there's probably like 10, 15 missions per level. If I'm under world, I think they might call them worlds, and each one has a unique style and is going for a different vibe. Um, First one being sort of a village, and then progressing onwards to more eldritch abominations by the time you get to the end. So yeah, there's just a lot of really interesting art design throughout the entire game, whether it be enemies, which I will go over in greater detail in a moment, levels, weapons. Weapons are actually probably my favorite part of the game. I'll go over a couple of those in a second as well. But it just, you can tell whoever was the art director, I'll try to find the name, put it on screen now, really cared about it, and to me, put a lot of love into this game, and you can really see it. Now, like I just mentioned, one of the second best parts is probably the gun design. I'll give you a couple examples on screen now of why I'm saying that. But if you look at a couple of the guns, you can see these like little intricate patterns. The pistol is a great example of this. The firing, the hammer on the revolver at the beginning of the game is a little Cthulhu head. Almost every single gun in the game has some little intricate, I can't say that word, design thing that lends itself to the game and its world, and I really appreciate that. Continuing from there, the enemies themselves all have very unique designs, and I really appreciate their designs. My favorite one in the game is probably the Liquidator, which is actually a fairly basic enemy. You see at the very beginning of the game, I believe, or maybe the second level. However, the thing I like about it is that it has so many different forms. So you have your basic liquidator you see early on. It looks kind of like a World War I era soldier a little bit. But then if you're in a city level, the liquidators sort of look like police. Or if you're in a hospital level, they look like nurses. They have the same functions, and they have the same special kill animations, which I'll get to in a second, but they look different, and enemy variation is a rare thing in shooters. And so I really appreciate that, like where it's the same enemy but it has multiple variants. I think is really cool. Now I know it's probably just a reskin, but just the appearance is awesome that they bothered to do that. Now, one thing that's sort of more gameplay related and not art related, but I'll bring up here anyway, is that I really appreciate that for almost all the enemies in the game, not all of them, but almost all of them, they have multi-stage deaths, or you have to kill them in a certain way to not trigger another stage. So what do I mean by that? Well, the basic zombies in the game, if you shoot them in the head, let's say, they die pretty much instantly with the basic pistol. However, certain zombies are carrying another head, and if you shoot their main head off, they'll put the other head on. So then you have to shoot them in the head twice. Or you could shoot the extra head out of their hands, and then shoot their normal head, and then they'll die. Almost every enemy in the game is like this. So for instance, the fat fishes, which are these like kind of fat fish-looking dubers, if you don't kill them with a headshot and just do body damage, they'll turn into a torso with an arm and a head, and they'll crawl after you. So it encourages you to go ahead and, in fact, kill them by shooting them in the head to make sure you don't deal with their second stage. Another example of this is the liquidators. As I mentioned prior, they have sort of like a tank thing to the, I believe, left of their head. And so doing headshots to them doesn't really do a whole lot of damage. However, if you shoot the tank, they turn from a ranged enemy into a close combat enemy, because the tank is the thing that lets them shoot. So if you break the tank, they turn into a melee enemy and they start charging at you. Not every enemy in the game is like this, but it's a theme that persists through most of the enemy design, and I really appreciate it. Sound design. One of the hardest things to get right in a game. Forgive Me Father is pretty good. It's not great. Some of its music is great, but I would say overall, the sound design as a whole is good. So, song-wise, is there stuff that pops out to me? Yes, there is. Just Don't Look Down, I believe, from the rooftop level, I think it's level 4, is fantastic. Any song that can incorporate an organ, peak. Again, are all the songs, top tier bangers of this subgenre? No, but you will not be unhappy with your purchase if you're going in this for just the music. Just my opinion, but if you like music in your boomer shooters, this one's got some good bops. It's even got some good ambient music. A good example of one of the more excellent ones, I feel like, is the very last track, which is written. One thing I should say is most of the track names are in broken English, because I'm assuming they were written in Polish and then translated to English, like all the other writing in the game. And so the last track is "And Where You Went, Rest Vanished." To me, that doesn't sound entirely correct, but that's what it says it is. And several of the other songs are song titles are quite funny to read. I would recommend giving them a little overview. I will put a playlist down in the description of the entire OST, and I highly recommend you listen to it when you get the chance. Now, what about other sounds in the game? Like monster sounds, gun sounds, that kind of thing. Player sounds. That's where the rest of the game sort of falls a little bit. Perfectly honest with you, and this might sound kind of weird, the gun sounds must have been kind of mid, because they just sort of went over my head most of the game, and it wasn't until I started writing this review that I actually realized that I should go listen to them. And they're okay. They're really okay. Again, the fully upgraded shotgun's probably one of the better ones in the game. That's certainly something I hope the game improves for Forgive Me Father 2, which is, again, coming into early access very soon. So I hope the gun noises are improved. They're not bad. they're not hurrah first level pistol bad. Nothing is that bad, although I'm convinced that one was done on purpose. Um, but they're okay. Another example, player sounds. I kind of mentioned it before. Um, they're okay. Both the journalist and the priest are fine. I think the priest is better for his voice lines because they sound a bit more like actual English instead of this. So yeah, they're fine. Voice lines are fine. Character sounds are fine. They make their own little weird little grunt things too, and they're acceptable for a game. Enemy noises are a little bit better. Actually, not a little bit better. They are a lot better than most things. My bigger problem is that there isn't a whole huge variety of them like there are with the enemy designs, which is totally fine. I can recall maybe one or two noises per enemy, which is acceptable. You're killing them, so it's whatever. Um,
That is new. I remember seeing it on sale recently.
so overall, I would say the sound design, the soundscape is good, not great. Really, I would add on to that it's a great soundtrack brought down by overall not stellar but good sound design. Gameplay can be kind of subjective. I remember when this game came out, it got a lot of sixes and sevens, I think even a couple fives. A lot of people didn't like it. Now, personally, do I think the gameplay is good and borderlines on great in certain places? Yes, I do. It's with everything else we've talked about and will talk about, it's just the perfect combination of things. However, let's go over some of its shortcomings. Is the gameplay as tight as other boomer shooters and new era shooters that came out around the same time? No. And that is a huge problem with its perceived quality. Um, when you're coming out around games that I'm not going to say the titles of, that are titans or legends in this space, and you're not as good or better, you're just going to be considered bad. I think if you want to use a recent reference for this, Starfield launching in the same year as Baldur's Gate 3, bad for Starfield. It could be perfect. Baldur's Gate 3, according to other people, I haven't played it yet, is just pure magic. That kind of thing. If you've got your indie game, you should really try to make sure you don't release it around anything else that could remotely crush your game. That being said, do I really like the gunplay? Yes, I do. The gunplay is really good. That mixed with the abilities you have, and there's two different characters, and each one has a different ability set. I think it's excellent. The journalist is more combat focused, and the priest is more defense oriented. The priest is significantly, I think, easier because he can heal himself, and I also think just better because the health drops in this game can be very odd. So I would recommend the priest for the first playthrough. But yeah, is the gunplay the tightest thing ever? Is it the fastest thing ever? No, it is not. But is it good? It is very good. And with the rest of the game, it ties it together quite well. Now, that being said, what will you be doing in these levels? Well, if you're really into the story, you'll be definitely hunting for story cues, where story cues actually go towards your 100% perfection of a level score, so you need to find those. You'll be finding a lot of keys. There are a ton of keys in this game. They use the traditional red, yellow, blue scape. And yeah, you'll be finding a lot of keys, opening a lot of doors, and doing a ton of shooting. I will say at this point that when you're doing your second playthrough with a different character to try to get all the achievements, it can get a little repetitive. Mainly because at that point you're playing a New Game Plus mode, which, yes, this game has New Game Plus, and you can just take another character who's higher level and play through the game again. It can get a little repetitive, but that's for people who want to 100% the game. If you're just going from start to finish, magical. So yeah, gunplay, abilities, mixed with the graphics and the sound and the okay story, I think it's a really good package. So, really quickly, I wanted to go over two things I wasn't really expecting, one of which I already kind of went over, but really quickly. This game has an endless mode, which is pretty common for this kind of game, and it's an alright endless mode. I do think the first level is the best one. I definitely don't recommend jumping into the endless mode right off the bat. Play through the game, then go to the endless mode for the achievements, which I think there's only two of. And it can be kind of useful in trying to get some of the other abilities-based achievements to use the endless mode for that, but it's not really anything special. I will say, if you try to jump into the endless mode before playing the main story, this game is going to seem a lot harder than it is. That's what I did, and I'm like, this game is kind of hard. And it's not really hard, it's just that you need to learn certain things about how the enemies work, how the weapons work, how the leveling works, and the campaign will teach you that before you jump into Endless. The second thing, which I mentioned in the previous gameplay section, is it has a new game plus. And I think that's really cool, even though it's not really the best kind of game to utilize New Game Plus. Like, it doesn't seem entirely necessary. I'm glad it's there. I think more games should have it, but I hope to see the idea of it expanded upon for the second game because it feels a little out of place to me in this game. It doesn't really help you a whole lot. For certain achievements, it might help you get them, but for instance, two of the hardest achievements in the game, sort of, technically by percentage, are just completing the game with the priest and the journalist. When you do New Game Plus, it's not like you get your levels transferred to the other character to get the other achievement. So I finished the game first with journalist, and then I finished it with priest, and I had to start a new priest character. So it's, again, kind of odd, but again, a welcome addition. Let's go ahead and move on to achievements. So achievements are kind of a thing, you either like getting them or you don't. I really like getting achievements. If you don't, use the timestamp on the screen or the sections to skip this part. So, does the game have good achievements? Kinda. It should really have more for the length of the game, and it should. My main criticism is that it really should have more based on levels. This game, for how long it is, only has 3 achievements for doing weird or interesting things in levels. I could be wrong about that, and I'm not sure if I just am not remembering some. I just double checked a second ago. But as far as I remember, I think there's one called Don't Have Fun for shooting the balloons in a certain level. There's Run Forest Run for running through a level, forest level without taking any damage. And there's Bullseye for shooting a target on a certain level. This game has like a stupid amount of levels. It should have more than that for interesting, unique things in the levels. They could put more in, so I really hope to see that improved upon in the second game. Another part of this is that getting certain of the achievements can just feel like a grind fest. Getting the first achievement, either with the priest or the journalist, is easy. You play the game and you get it. Getting the second one, even with New Game Plus, just feels like a slog because by that time you probably have the other achievements and you're basically doing a second run for the one achievement. And that's not very, to me, it wasn't very fun. It felt like a grind. I knew how to play the game, so I beat the game in like an hour or something stupid. I did it really fast with the second character, but it shouldn't feel like that much of a grind. They should change it up a little bit or make it so you don't have to do the whole grind again. Like instead of the achievement being play through the whole game with the priest or the journalist and have 2 of them for each character, make it so it's just beat the final boss with both characters or something like that. So you can just level select into that achievement instead of it taking up several hours of your time. So achievement wise, it's okay. It's not great, it's good. Kind of like a lot of other things in this game. It's great, it's good, but it's not great. And I think it's a great package when it's put together, but not the individual things. So, the story. What's the game about? Doesn't really even matter. No, it doesn't. The story is mainly there to move the gameplay along, which is totally fine. for this type of game. Now, that being said, does it have a better than average story for a boomer shooter? I think so. It's not the best one ever I've played, but it's pretty good. It definitely has some shortcomings in the voice acting department, mainly that the voices are bad. The only decent one is really the narrator during the cutscenes. In between, after you kill a boss, you get a cutscene to move the story along. He's decent, but the writing that you can tell the game was not initially written in English. It was, I believe, written in Polish. I would assume because BitBarrel is from Poland, and then translated into English. So I hope for the next game that is something they address. Along with that, I was kind of disappointed, little spoiler here, that if you finish the game, because there's two different characters, they both have the same ending. And I was kind of upset by that a little bit. I was hoping there'd be at least a little bit of a difference, and there really isn't. The only difference really between the two characters are their ability sets. Story-wise, you're just going to a place to look for your cousin, and something happens to your cousin, so then you're getting revenge. That's the whole story. It's all right. I do really like the fact that there's a lot of story elements in the environment, like literally you have to click on them. It's also with references. This game has so many references that is a good and a bad thing. Harat has taught me that references can be used for so much more than simply referring to something, and can actually be used as a teaching tool. And ever since I played that game, just basic references don't do it for me anymore. I want deep references, and this game doesn't got that, which is fine. It has normal references in it, and it has a lot of them. So if you like looking for stuff, that's cool. One thing, again, to go to the achievements, this game doesn't really have achievements based on references. Like, imagine if there was one that was like, find 25 references, because you could totally do that and like make them interactable somehow. Like maybe not pop up on the screen, but something like that, like the story elements. That would be really cool, and it would give you something that's like loosely telling you what it's from without actually referencing the IP, something like that. So overall, is it a good story? No. Is it better than most? Yes. Do I recommend the game just based off of the story? No, I would never recommend any boomer shooter off of the story ever. I'm fairly positive. And the references are fine, and really could have been improved upon if there was some achievement interaction. So yeah, without that, let's get moving on to something else. So putting a score on a game is really difficult. So I'm not going to. I think definitely after the whole Starfield debacle and several other high-profile games that came out and had high scores, and then less than high scores later, putting a number on a game is, well, rather silly. So instead, at the end of all my reviews going forward, I'm going to put the games in a rank. Now, obviously, I'm going to do this based off genre, and the majority of the games I'm going to be reviewing and playing are shooters slash boomers shooters slash new era shooters. So, pretty much that is going to be in the list. And I'm only including games on this list that I have 100%ed and that I think are good. If the game is not good and I'm not recommending it, it's not going to be in this list. I'll make separate videos about collections of games that I dislike, but I will never review a game I don't like, because there's no, in my opinion, there's no reason to hate review something. If it's not good, I'm not going to give it any airtime. So I recommend all these games. If you have similar tastes, and you see other games you've played on here and you enjoy, then you'll know that probably this one's going to line up for you. So my number one boomer shooter of all time is Dusk. I mean, like, come on, it's Dusk. That's number one. Number two is Herat, and then I'm slotting in Forgive Me, Father in between Post Void and Herat. So it's my new third. It is very good. Obviously, I have gone over the reasons why in the beginning of the video. I would love to hear your opinion on it. I know it's actually can be somewhat of a divisive game amongst the new era shooter community, if you would like to call it that. And several people I know who like those kinds of games refuse to play Forgive Me Father for its inclusion of, let's say, experience or an attempt at a story, or they just don't like the graphics, which I think is really silly. But yeah, please let me know down below what you think. I would love to hear your opinion on it, your criticisms, your likes, and everything like that. So without further ado, I really appreciate you coming here and watching the video. This is my first review. Please let me know how I've done down in the comments section. I would love any critiques about the format, how I'm talking, how the video's edited. Let it all out down in the comment section. I would love some feedback. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day.